What is familiar to me is the fantastic success story of the North East across a whole range of different technology sectors. What I didn't know is that the North East is the home of the world's largest bingo company, and long may it remain that way. But the fact that government tech sits alongside business tech is fascinating and important, and also the growth of some very large companies here, potential unicorns, billion-dollar companies that are growing up here in the North East. I think two messages came out from the roundtable. The first is that a lot of people based in the North East, living in the North East, don't realise what a huge success story the North East is in terms of technology. Some companies said to me, actually, people in London are more familiar with the success of what's going on in the North East than some people actually living here. And that relates to the other issue that came across, which is the desperate need for skills for these companies. Now, that is not an issue that the North East faces alone. You'll have a skills shortage in London, you'll have a skills shortage in Silicon Valley. The digital technologies are so transformatory and changing things so quickly that keeping pace is very difficult. But I think the more people know what is happening in the North East, the more we can tell people at school that these great opportunities exist literally on their doorstep, the more will change the mindset, not just of pupils, but also teachers in schools as well. And the more businesses are able to work together with colleges and universities, that will also help. But I think the government obviously has a role to play as well, and skills is one of the things that we're looking at very carefully, and also business support. So I'm very pleased, for example, we have the Digital Catapult, which has one of its centres up here in the North East, looking at how businesses can use data more effectively. Digital Catapult's just appointed a new chief executive, and he'll be looking very hard at what the Digital Catapult should focus on, and I know that he'll want to hear from the kind of companies that are represented in this room about its future direction. There's the establishment of the National Institute for Smart Data Innovation as well, which is going to obviously do what it says on the tin. How do we use data more effectively? But I've had some pretty robust discussions again this morning with some of the businesses that I met about how government can actually make sure that Innovation Centre works effectively with companies in the North East. There's the Centre for Doctoral Training in Big Data. There's so much going on, I have to keep referring to my notes. And of course, in 2015, the establishment of Tech North, to make it absolutely clear that Tech City represented the whole of the UK, and that we wanted to make sure that the great success story happening in the North was represented. We're looking at establishing an Institute for Coding. We've put coding into the national curriculum. So there's a lot going on in terms of how government supports tech. We're publishing our digital strategy, hopefully next week, if the government hasn't gone into complete and utter meltdown, which I have to say could happen whichever way the result goes. And that's going to look at infrastructure, and I met with iNorthumberland to hear about how well broadband rollout is going out in the North East. Obviously, building infrastructure, building a 4G network and a fibre network is one of our priorities. We feel we've achieved phase one, but we need to kick on and go further. We need to prepare ourselves for 5G and the Internet of Things as well. We need to continue to support technology companies, both in terms of investment and in terms of your access to skills. We need to permeate technology in what one would loosely call the public sector, the health service, obviously, but also education, but transport as well, and many other, energy. And we need, as a government, to lead the way and digitally transform government and the services that it provides to citizens. So that's what the digital strategy will talk about when it's published. And then we'll be publishing a digital economy bill, which is going to make some key changes, none of them particularly, on the face of it, very exciting, but important changes about how we manage spectrum, how we change planning laws to reduce the cost of infrastructure, and many other things in between. So that's a quick run-round of what I've been doing up here today, and also what we're doing on a national level. And I'll be delighted to take questions. If they're too hostile and too difficult, then I'll just run for my train 5 minutes earlier and ask Alex to take over. Thank you very much.
A friendly audience. I guess I wanted to ask about the Northern Powerhouse.
I think it's very, very important that cities like Sunderland and Newcastle get involved in that, and it's not seen as a Northwest initiative. And it may be even hearing the concern from the North East, I'm sure if I was sitting in front of an audience in Liverpool, they too would be saying, is the Northern Powerhouse all about Manchester as well? So I think it's important that we engage with everyone in terms of the Northern Powerhouse strategy. It is about cities in the north working together to make a clear offer. And I think that, again, with my culture on what I said earlier when I did a media interview is, one of the things that really impressed me when we were putting together our culture white paper was it was the North East that led the way in our thinking, because the North East cultural partnership, cultural strategy is a very pioneering way of giving the North East a clear cultural offer, message, strategy for the next 15 years. And I think, if it doesn't sound too weird, it's a very good template for a lot of different sectors in the North East, particularly the tech sector, to say, look at what you could find across the North East, put it together, and it's an incredibly compelling offer.
Sure. Okay. Well, let's talk about Tech North itself, and that's started going, I guess, just over a year ago. £2.2 million budget. It didn't have the easiest of starts.
Well, we're looking at how we define the whole of Tech City's role, because I do think that Tech City and Tech North have been a great success story. But I think what it's done is it's been relatively light touch, it's been nimble and flexible, not too bureaucratic. It's responded to its customers, if I can put it that way, the tech companies that work with it, in terms of what you need from a quasi-government organisation. So it's allowed a dialogue between government and the tech community about what changes and reforms are needed at a policy level. And Tech North was obviously a move, a clear statement to say that, as I said in my opening remarks, that Tech City is a national organisation. It's not just a bunch of hipsters in Shoreditch. And Tech Nation, the report, is again a very clear statement of the success of tech clusters all across the UK. So I think that's a success. I know that the establishment of Tech North has not been, there have been one or two bumps in the road on the way, but I think in terms of, for example, its Northern Stars competition, I know that Tech North was very heavily represented, obviously, at the Tech City 5th anniversary event and so on. So again, and it's allowed me, actually working through Tech North, I think, to have a much better dialogue with companies based in the North East than I had before Tech North was established. So I've lost the point of my answer, which was to say that we are, as part of the digital strategy, I hope these things always change at the last minute in government, looking at how we can expand Tech City / Tech North's operations. In particular, I think selling the tech story of the UK globally, attracting inward investment, but also helping companies that work with the Tech North and Tech City to expand globally. I think that's the big challenge. Well, I think there was some confusion, but if you take the catapult as a parallel example, there's no confusion there. The catapult it's one catapult with 3 different locations, and they were very proud and very intent from the get-go, before it even opened its door, to make sure that it was a nationwide organisation with physical bases around the country. And I think we should see one tech city which has bases around the country, a base in London and a base in the north, and there may be further outposts of tech city that will emerge. But I think it's got to work, in my view, as one organisation. But as I say, by having a physical base, ironically, given the technology focus, by having a physical base up in the north, you almost by definition shift the axis in a way you couldn't before, when there was simply one location in London.
Sure.
And to see what my mum wanted.
Does Tech North just exist as a government-funded content provider? What is its role beyond doing that kind of public relations and communications work?
Well, I think there are a number of different roles. First of all, in terms of being a content provider, I think it's a really important function. So, in fact, that was when I stopped being a Tech City skeptic a few years ago, was when a major company from the US announced a major investment, and the chief executive said, we came here because of Tech City. And they didn't come here necessarily because Tech City's done anything in particular, but they said it did shine a light. So I think telling the story, we've been to a certain extent referring to this throughout my rather tortuous answers to your questions. You know, how does the North East tell its story in terms of, you know, is there a perception that the Northern Powerhouse is all about Manchester? How do the cities in the North East tell their story? So shining a light, I think, is a really important thing. I mean, it just is a very important thing. You've got to tell the story. And Tech City provided that platform for the tech community to start to tell its story. And that story, without wishing to sound like a sort of terrible Hollywood script, resonated around the world and I think contributed to a lot of the inward investments that's come, because once you start telling the story, people come and they visit and they say, okay, what is actually going on here? And then Tech City provides that front door. So we wanted to do more of that. And I think, secondly, that relationship with government, that porous relationship with government, is a really important thing, because providing a forum for ministers and, of course, officials, who are obviously the people who make all the real decisions, to sit down with real people who are running real businesses and trying to grow them and what their challenges are. And of course, we can't always meet your demands and respond to your concerns, because sometimes it's too difficult or impossible, but that conversation happens, I think, thanks to Tech City and Tech North. So those are two very important functions. And then there are other things they do, you know, the Digital Business Academy and the hands-on kind of support for scale-up businesses. Now, you would probably be able to tell me much better whether that's real and impactful, but certainly they tell me a good story about the impact of the Digital Business Academy and their kind of Future 50 and their support for companies that are growing in the UK, and from a politician's selfish point of view, their desire for those companies to stay and grow in the UK.
Sure. All right, listen, one last question. Looking forward and...
I like the fact you've banned the audience from us.
We have a good system.
I like it, because this is what Brexit looks like.
We can take one.
We're currently looking, at the moment, we will soon be announcing a competition to establish the Institute of Coding.
I've got a good idea as to where that should be placed.
I know, well I think you're going to win that competition. It's a collaboration between universities and businesses for a capital allocation of £20 million. We all know the problems with capital allocations, don't we? Because where's the revenue? See, he thinks ministers don't listen.
Great to hear the news that the digital strategy is emerging at last. It's been a long gestation. What do you think
He's taken the mic back.
What do you think that your biggest hope and the one tangible outcome from that strategy will be?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I think hopefully it will provide a narrative for the next 5 years. It will show that we're not complacent, that we don't think the job is done, nor do we think that government can kind of step away from doing the job. I think that, as I say, there are 4 elements, and it's, you know, and a lot of it is kind of kicking on, if you like, which I think was Guy Opperman's analogy. So kicking on with government transformation. So I do think government digital services is a real success story of government, not least in changing the mindset of government that it should take risks and experiment, and if things don't work the first time, keep trying again. Secondly, the need to kick on in terms of digital infrastructure. We've had a super fast rollout, we need to move to an ultra fast phase for the vast majority of businesses and consumers. Thirdly, this permeation of digital in public services. And fourthly, the support for tech businesses. And skills, and I think skills is such a sort of tough, in some ways a very dry subject, but is probably, I think, emerging as really the #1 priority for the whole tech community. A lot of other stuff, I don't want to again sound complacent, can take care of itself. A lot of other stuff like investment is going to happen. The level of investment is going to grow. A lot of the investment in fibre, as more and more people want it and need it, is going to happen. But skills is a really tough nut to crack.